Hello everybody, what's up YouTube? How's everyone doing today? So today we are going back to the Dirtywave M8. There's been a couple of kind of discoveries that I've had with regards to, you know, making music on the M8 obviously. And yeah, I'm kind of like, I don't really want to start any new tracks in the door because I'm kind of at the point where I've got a lot of stuff like in the works. I'm kind of just exploring other stuff at the moment. So yeah, if you guys have any ideas that you want me to have a look at, or if you have any questions about the M8 or workflow specifically, just hit me up in the chat and we're going to get into it. The idea today is to create a track from scratch. There's a couple of things that I want to show you that I've kind of discovered that make things a little bit, you know, more precise for creating tracks and that kind of thing. So anyway, what I want to start doing is just creating some blank tracks. And another thing that I've kind of started thinking about is creating different length blank tracks. So for example, the first row of, say for example, 0 digits, say for example 0, 1, what we'll do is we'll say this is a single blank phrase and just put a kill over here. And then for example we can have one that is 4 phrases long, which is 4 of the zeros. So that way we can create slightly more dynamic song structures that aren't just blocks of 16s or 32s. And that kind of thing, because often, you know, with Psytrance, specifically breaks and build-ups, you don't have that rigid, you know, 16-bar structure that we know. So this way, straight off the bat, we've got a sort of easy way we could start to, you know, arrange things slightly, you know, within a grid. So for example, here, if we wanted an intro sound with just a single bar, or whether we wanted it with 4 bars, we could quickly create these kind of blank clips to suit whatever our needs are. So let's actually create one which is, I like to work with 8s as well for kind of longer arrangement patterns. So we can actually start off creating like a lead pattern or something like that over here. So what we can do is say, for example, go down to 0 and say like our bank of 1s can be kick. We can do kick together with bass, or we can do it separately. I think it's actually easier to do it together on the same clip or in the same lane in the tracker, just because, you know, for breaks and that kind of thing, you don't often have them playing at the same time. And it's just easier to keep in account like everything that's going on. So then like 2 and 3 can be our percussions, and maybe 4 can be like the start of the main leads. So then here, for example, let's just put in an instrument. So, okay, instrument 1 can be the kick. Instrument 2, in fact, what we can do is we can just jump a whole bunch, because there's quite a few slots that you can actually load up here. Let's just go straight to macro synth, and maybe let's just start with something simple like a saw. And straight off the bat, I actually just want to apply the envelope to the volume and turn the decay down. This way, we can just easily punch in single notes, and it won't hold the note. So without that envelope, it will kind of hold the note until the next thing. And I find when putting in notes, it's actually a bit easier to kind of not pay too much attention to the length of the notes while you're kind of finding the pattern, and rather just focus on the notes themselves, and then you can go in and fine tune the different lengths and that kind of thing. Another really cool tip that I figured out is if you just put in a clip here like 40 and you press Shift Option Edit, it clones the phrase. So now this is going to loop twice, but in the second one we can dive in here and edit it, so it's a slightly different sequence. So we have a longer phrase basically. So then once we got like a pattern going, we can jump in and start editing the like parameters of the sound. Like for example, we can jump back here and turn off the envelope and actually just use kill commands instead. So for example, if we want a short note here, we can say kill after 10 ticks, or kill after 1 tick, for example, which is a very, very short note. Or you could say kill on the next note. You know what I mean? So this way we could do some interesting things where it kind of holds and then bends to the next note and that kind of thing. Well, here's the thing: is you can actually plug MIDI into this, and you can play the MIDI. And in fact, what we could do is I could actually just grab a MIDI controller and plug it in. But I think then it's kind of a bit technical with the setup, all these things going on, and I kind of prefer the granular approach to being able to edit singular notes and remove them while the thing is playing. I just feel like it's a much nicer way to create these kind of more complex grooves than to try play those grooves in exactly on time. Do you know what I mean? I think the coolest thing also about getting like really granular with each step is the ability to modulate stuff within each step. So for example, we can go over to phrase 40, which is the first of our lead synth things. And we can start punching in, for example, different decay times for each of the steps. So this then would basically change. And as you're punching it in, you can actually hear the difference that it makes. So actually, we don't want envelope 1 decay. Maybe we want envelope 2. Okay, so I want to talk about some of the really cool sampling capabilities that I've figured out. But first, let's just put in a kick, which I'm just going to use a sampler for. It's the best way to kind of get really clean stuff. We are in G. Yeah, absolutely. You can chain patterns. That's kind of the whole thing about it, is chaining patterns together and stuff like that. It's a traditional tracker sequencer with more advanced synthesis capabilities. So yes, you can definitely chain sequences. Okay, so like I said, let's talk about that sampling thing. So we've got the kick samples in here, right? So I figured out a kind of sneaky way to do, what am I doing? To do multi-samples. So if we add in a sampler over here, what I want to do is I want to set transpose to off. In fact, we want it on. Never mind. So let's say, for example, I want to show you a loop that I've prepared, which is basically a sequence of 32 bass notes that go up in pitch one by one. That starts on a very low C. So what we can do is we can load this in, and here, this parameter determines how many slices you want to automatically slice the sample into and lay it over that amount of keys. So for example, 32 would mean that it's going to start at a low C and slice this sample up into 32 slices and layer it onto notes sequentially upwards. So essentially what we're doing is we're creating a multi-sample out of just a single loop that we've prepared beforehand. So what this means is now we can have bass notes, and we can kind of change the note, but we're still getting a very clean transient, and the sound is kind of the same every time, even if we're changing notes quite vastly. So we're getting, it's a very nice way to kind of sequence Psytrance basses, but very cleanly, is to kind of do it with multi-samples, obviously. But to just quickly slice it into 32 like that is such a cool system, I think. It is pricey. It is pricey, but for what you're getting, it is actually the most value for money synth on the market, in my opinion. Because I mean, if you compare other things in this price range, you can't make a whole song on just the one thing. You need the thing, which they then say, okay, well, here's a free version of Ableton so that you can use this thing to its full potential. Do you know what I mean? And then you still need a laptop or a computer or whatever to use said item to its full potential and that kind of thing. Whereas this, you don't necessarily need the computer at all. You can just literally just sit with the power off, with your headphones on, and make a complete track to a pretty advanced level, you know, not just kind of like lo-fi beats and that kind of thing. Like, you can get very technical with it, you know what I mean? Like, chop samples up exactly to how you need them and that kind of thing. It's the most advanced kind of sequence / synthesizer bar none on the market. I mean, unless somebody wants to say, like, show me another example of something like that. Most of the other things in this kind of like this kind of device style, let's just say, most of these Groovebox things are either way more expensive and still don't offer the same kind of value set, in my opinion, or they're very specific things that are quite limited. You know, for example, like the Roland MC stuff is great, but you're very limited into like the type of sounds that you can create. You know what I mean? Whereas with this, you can kind of use samples as oscillators. There's all these different synth modes, all sorts of really cool things that you can do with it. But isn't it like that with any device? You know what I mean? Like Electribes, any of those, when you're committing to buying it, you're committing to the workflow. You know what I mean? Any hardware device is like that, I guess. Hey, no hate towards the MCs. No hate. It's just that they're kind of like, I don't know, like, I think I've spoken myself into a corner because I'm going to say that, like, they're very, very Rolandy in the way that you approach creating tracks on them. Either that or you need, like, the other software to be able to do the sound design stuff. Do you know what I mean? But it goes down to, like, personal preference again, you know, and I think that's why hardware is such a difficult thing to kind of like say like one is better than the other, you know what I mean? It's down to personal preference, you know. But in terms of features for the price, like something that's quantifiable, in my opinion, in terms of the amount of features that you can do to create full compelling arrangements, like nothing else can do it at this size and at this price. You know what I mean? Like, this is the size of a pocket operator, the price of like a couple of them, but it's got way more functions than even the top teenage engineering stuff. You know what I mean? So with this multi-sample thing, what we can use this for is also to create like grids and that kind of thing, because you can slice up, you can take a loop and then you can slice it up into several different smaller chunks of audio and then use that, for example, to, in fact, what I'm going to do is we can create various different phrases here that are all slightly different. I think that's going to be nice. Give us kind of more moving sequences. So let's start with 50 over here. And then let's put in a sampler. I don't think we're going to want to transpose here because we're doing a multi-sample thing. And so here, let's load. And I've got a couple that I've already prepared here. Let's just see. Grids, 8 hits, 16 hits. Okay, wait, we need to transpose this. So because this is a multi-sample thing, and because we're using the note selection to actually choose what slices are being played as opposed to what notes are being played, we're going to have to actually change the pitch of these notes. And the easiest way to do that is to actually just go over to the table over here. So each instrument has what's called a table, which is not a wavetable. It's a kind of table of modulation, which you can apply like arpeggiators and all sorts of custom effects to and that kind of thing. But in this instance, what we could use this for is to just apply a pitch change across the board. So how we would do this is to figure out the amount of pitch that we would need to change. So this grid, I believe, was in C, and we are changing to a G, which is either -5 or +7. So we can actually just go like +7 over here. And then what we want to do is we want to create a hop command. So what this does is it basically just jumps back to the beginning. So it's always going to be on the first step. Let's try -5. I don't like that so much. Maybe we can find a grid in G and then chop that up. If I may ask, STN, what's the difference between the fine-tune command and the pitch? Hey, 4i20, how are you doing? So if you have instances like this where the automatic pitch duplicate in table and increase each tick, and fine-tune makes it once. Yeah, but if you hop, it stops that duplication of the ticks. It kind of stops on that step and resets, doesn't it? If I'm not mistaken. That's kind of what it does. Wave Mage, yep, this is the MA tracker. Like I was saying, if, for example, we have... No, it's okay. These things happen. A thing here which is not quite hitting on the notes that we need. Sometimes there's duplicates. We can actually go in here and edit the slice markers. In fact, what we want to do is firstly, let's just slice it into the 32s like it was originally. Like this. And then we can go over here and actually fine tune each of the slice markers. So for example, the first one, there's like silence in the beginning, which we don't necessarily want. So the first hit, we can actually just go all the way over here. So then we can actually go back, like once we've edited these in, if we set this to, instead of 32, we set this to file, then these notes will correspond to the slices that we made individually, rather than automatically. Marker S. These are samples that I've made with Vital. Well, the kick I think is Camphor Audio's kick pack. See, now we've got that slice like exactly on the transient. It's like much better to get more, I think technical control this way of the sounds. Oh yeah, you're right. It does need to be fine-tuned. For some reason, the pitch was diving there when you set it to pitch rather than fine-tune. Interesting. 7177, how you doing? So this PLY, what this does is you can change the play mode. So you can reverse some of the hits. Oh, so cool. So with the cloning thing, if you're in the song section and you hit edit twice, did you see there it said clone phrases and chains? And so what that does is each of the chains gets duplicated. So this is really cool. Say for example, if we have a pattern like this, which is that kind of off hi-hat on the offbeat, and we want to change that to open hi-hats instead every single time, then just kind of cloning it, adding a new sampler, and changing which instrument it's being sent to is just such a quick method of being able to do that. So let's go drums, Thomas Denton, hi-hat, open, the one. So it's instrument number 4. So if we go in here, change pattern phrase number 23, change each of these to the 4 instead. Now we have, and number 24 as well, we want to do that. We've basically just created a duplicate and swapped out the instruments. And this one as well. So now we have like a variation with an open hat and one with a closed hat. I need to be right back, so just give me 2 minutes, guys, and I'll loop this for you. Okay. There's another really cool thing that I discovered with this, is that you can bounce clips, basically, and then automatically load them into samplers. So, for example, we open up the selection system, and I think it's edit, double tap edit. Is render selection to sample? Yes. It'll do its thing. And then automatically load that sample into the next instrument, number 5. And then what we could do is we can go over here. Say, for example, let's do like 7 is like our effects, a number of effects chains, for example. And then over here, just say put in this. And then automatically selected is instrument 5. So this is that whole loop that we selected and rendered. So this is really cool for adding effects like onto the kind of rendered samples that we've created. Like, for example, in intros where we want to, say, for example, put on like a filter onto like the kick and bass and percussions group. Ooh, that actually sounds nice. That bit crusher, it's nice. And then we can even slice it with that same thing from before and then do like chops. What do you mean it's a whole nother music language to learn? It's C-1, re-trigger. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of like learning a thing, like you can't get more basic than and intuitive than trackers, in my opinion. And people say like, oh, it looks so complicated, but it's just because they're daunted by the fact that there's numbers on the screen. But actually, it gives you more information than your traditional DAWs, because there's a C-1, and you know that it's playing at 7F, which is full. So it's like 70% basically. It's playing at 70% velocity. Instrument number 5, the last steps are being re-triggered 2 ticks and then 1 tick. It's like, once you understand how trackers work, is they're actually wrong wording. Once you understand what these represent, it's actually the most intuitive way of writing music, because you don't actually have to learn all of the ways that it's trying to get you to do the things, because you can kind of just see on screen what's happening. Whereas a lot of DAWs, you have to know where to put the mouse to do certain things, and you have to know all these certain things to do certain things, you know what I mean? Or, like, for example, with like Reason, don't even get me started, you know what I mean? Like, I love Reason, but it's like, it requires more preparation than anything when making music, Reason is specifically bad with that. I may be wrong. Or maybe it's just my personal opinion. No, 7F is not full volume. It can still go higher, can't? Oh, no, 7F is full. I thought FF was full, but then I realized, like, it's different with the velocity. Yeah, absolutely. So how it works is you just add a new instrument, and you just set this to MIDI out. And it's got actual MIDI, TRS, or you can use MIDI USB. And you can set all these parameters to do whatever you need it to do. The only reason I'm not doing it is because, like, I'm on stream. It's just difficult to manage lots of equipment at the same time. And it's very difficult to manage, like, a stream and a piece of hardware at the same time. Like inputs and outputs and all those types of things. So I generally try to stick to one specific piece of hardware, or like my modular system, or Bitwig. But trying to get them all together, live on the spot can be very difficult. But yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory here. Just add a MIDI out. You can also assign any of the parameters that you see these kinds of faders. You can assign to either MIDI in, or you can assign it to your X or Y on the touchscreen. There is a multi-channel waveform display. I don't want to say how to do it because it's a bit of an Easter egg, but the problem is it doesn't work while you're using the USB display thing. So there's obviously like a little clash there with the amount of hardware usage needed for both of those things, and you just can't do them at the same time. So if I unplug the USB, I can actually use the multi-channel waveform display that actually displays all 8 channels, the waveforms of them. Like it does along the top here. For each of the... So if you hover over a channel, it'll do the waveform of that channel. But there is like an extra Easter egg mode which you can use to display all of them, all 8. Most of the people actually that upload their M8 videos with their songs, you'll see them using that mode. No, most of these samples are my own custom samples that I've added. I like the reverb. It's the send of the reverb which I find to be particularly sensitive. So there's like this between, I think, about 75% or 85%, which can suddenly jump like, oh, poof, too much reverb. But if you kind of play that line, you can get some really good reverb sounds. But also play with the dry. So play with the send and the dry of your sound that's sending to the reverb. You can get some pretty good results that way. But also here in the settings, you can actually change the high pass and low pass of your reverbs. So generally, I actually like to set this up a little bit. And I also like to set my feedback on my delay up a little bit, as well as a bit more high pass on that one. We can actually do about 30 high pass on the filter HP. And what that does is that removes the low frequencies from the reverb's output. I find that just makes the sound a bit better, in my opinion, as well. It allows you to actually pump the reverbs a little bit louder without getting too much, without it becoming too overwhelming. I think we need some kind of like melodic arpeggiated, like type of sine wavy lead, maybe in a higher register. How would I use it in my hardware setup? So what I would do is I would write songs, and then I would assign the outputs of the instruments to my hardware, and then jam those while the song plays. I think that also was, for me, a very appealing thing about it, is the ability to do that kind of thing as well. But what have I done? Let's rather duplicate this way. And then select this again down. So what we can do is we can also make polymetric patterns by using the hop command to hop back to phrase 0. But this gets a bit tricky because I find like trying to get it to work, you have to actually count the numbers. So like, actually, let's not do that. Let's rather just create. So then here, for example, we'll start the pattern. Paste. And then just continue it in the next phrase. 31. But yeah, I actually wanted to say there's this cool thing that you can do where if you select these with this mode, I think shift up or down, move, it nudges the clips up or down. So you see we ended on G7. What we can do is we can shift this up like this so that G7, you see that, like that. So it'll now. So it'll like move sequentially through the phrases that way. So in this clip, what we can do is we can make a kick with a reverb on it. So let's say I think, okay, we used that one. So now we can have like an intro, for example, that's consisted of bars of 8. And then we can use, for example, like bars of 2 in like a breakdown or something to lead it into the next section. I found like breaking it up like that kind of makes the arrangement always sound a little bit more compelling, because you're not just like, oh, every 16th expecting something to happen, you know? Maybe we can make some kind of thing here in the drop. Maybe we can find like a drum sample, load that in. That could be interesting. Samples, like a loop or something. I actually have something here, which is, I think, a bunch of okay, so this will be cool more for like during the beat, maybe in the break. We can use some of these big hits maybe. So wait, how many of those? 16 hits. So if we slice by 16, we should have individual hits. Nice. Another interesting thing we can do is we can actually use the band stop to kind of EQ specific frequencies kind of out. So there's pretty much mid-range. What we can also do is modulate the like the delays on these ones up. So the reason why there's a difference between like cloning chain and phrase is like in this example, I don't want to create new variations of all of these. I just want a different one in the beginning here. So like, let's say for example, add a 62 here. And in this one, I want like a big drum hit sound. You can actually even use this one from this other lane that we had here. Maybe just like increase the delay and reverb here. So we're kind of like using the sounds that are already there, we're just modulating them in different ways to create variations. So now we have like a kind of crash type of thing in the beginning of this sequence. So when we want the effects to have that crash, we can kind of just throw it in there when we need, you know? are there any MA people in the chat that can let me know, is there a way to loop a specific, like, how do I loop just the... Oh, wait, is there a... Maybe if we go like this, will it just loop this selection? But I guess you can't really do much like while the selection is in place, or I wonder if we deselect, will it carry on with just this loop? That's pretty cool. I'm using the song mode, but even in the live mode, it does do the loop. But I wonder, like, I didn't actually try to select just that one before. Does that make sense? Yo, you know what'd be really cool is to randomize the things, and I wonder if the pitch will play different... No, that's the actual pitch. It's not... Oh, but we can actually switch slices this way, I think. Yeah. Yeah, so I wonder, can we put in the slice and then random, which basically randomizes the last parameter by X amount, and you punch in the amount, basically. Yo, Exhale, Chi mentioned you in a workshop of his. He said you make the best face plant tutorials there are on YouTube. Indeed, she is a legend for that shout out. Oh, we got to put the random on each step. That's how it works, yeah. So let's put slice and then put the random on each step. But what we want to do is we want to choose only 32 slices, I think. Maybe less. Maybe this must be 0. Yeah, the thing is, like, I'm playing different slices rather than notes. So it does do it, but it pitches the thing rather than switches the slices. That's so sick. So what's happening here is it's on loop mode, and we're randomly changing the length. So it's kind of doing these kind of where the length of the sample loop is changing speed, basically. We can do that as well, maybe modulate that, play type. Rev loop every now and then. What could be cool here is like a kind of percussive, almost like I want to try to do something kind of similar to the Deep Jungle Walk random formant thing. So let's go. Where is it now? It's number 16, I think. One of these, vowel or vowel foff. Oh, that's good. That's good. Very good. No, that's the wrong instrument. We want to send it to 6. Okay, I'm gonna be right back. I'll see you guys in 2 minutes. At least we got significant more to loop for you now. Dirtywave Morph, how are you doing? Okay, so I want to make a kind of more main section, so something with a bit more of a driving bass line, you know, more full-on melodic bass line. So let's just copy one of these sections, paste it over here, and then what we can do is we can clone, and then here we can jump in and actually edit these bass clips. So like here in my head, I'm hearing this like in the breaks where this, so it goes da-da-da-da with the performance sound, and then in my head I hear like a couple of stabs, like a chord stab, and then maybe just like a squelch. So for the chord, what I want to do is we can use the macro. There is a wave paraphonic mode. And then I think the timbre, that changes the waveform. And this changes the chords. Okay, sick. It's sounding good. Okay. I think that's where I'm going to call it. I'm liking this. I haven't even saved this project. But the cool thing about this is that there's actually, when you start a project, it creates a temporary folder and it starts saving the project regardless. So if the battery runs out or something like that, you don't actually lose the project, because when you turn it back on again, it automatically just saves from the temp. So like, I mean, loads from the temp, which is pretty cool. Let me just call this 19, 12, 22. Let me put a bit of a descriptor just so I know what sort of genre, at least. Okay, cool. So I'm going to let it play through for those who want to stick around. Otherwise, thank you to everyone who has tuned in. If I don't see you guys again, I hope you all have a fantastic festive season. Otherwise, I'll see you on the flip side. Cheers.